So we're going to finish chapter 1 today. The sections are about the dreaming you versus the waking you, how dreams develop in childhood, the evolutionary benefits of dreaming, and that'll be the end of chapter 1. So again, I am reviewing the book This Is Why You Dream by Rahul Jandial, and it's an incredible book. If you are interested in this subject or find this video or what we speak about interesting, I recommend you go buy this book for yourself and read it. Support the author. I will be reading passages from this book because a lot of it is just so well written that just reading straight from it I think is the most useful thing to do. And then I'll give my opinions on some things. So let's dive in. The dreaming you versus the waking you. The question he's posing here is your dream self different from who you are when awake? Which is a really interesting question because a lot of people would say yes. I once had somebody ask Robert, a skeptic of dreams, ask Robert Moss in my home actually. He said, I once heard a quote that we are not responsible for our dreams. Meaning that like a lot of us do things in our dreams that that we might be embarrassed or ashamed of, or like are so not like us, or like I would never do that. And I thought Robert's response was really perfect, and he says we may not be responsible for what we do in our dreams or the contents of our dreams, but dreams surely call us to responsibility, as in they call us to be responsible for our own lives and our self-development. So, in research, they found, collecting dreams and comparing and contrasting dream narratives, they found you will almost always be the main character in your dream. The plot of your dreams will typically contain about 5 characters, and dream narratives are more likely to skew towards misfortune rather than good fortune, towards aggression rather than kindness. Using this scoring system showed that most dreams are not bizarre, but the ordinary stuff of everyday life. The notion that dreams are a continuation of our waking lives is called the continuity hypothesis of dreaming. The continuity hypothesis doesn't say our dreams perfectly mirror our waking selves, but it does say they reflect our personality, values, and drives, and that our dreams carry over from emotional preoccupations and concerns or needs when we are awake. According to proponents of this theory, so remember this is just a theory, perhaps as many as 70% of our dreams amount to embodied simulations of concerns and conceptions that are personal to us. Sure, I mean, what's there to disagree with? That's such a general statement. Like, concerns and conceptions that are personal to us. Yeah, of course. So I don't know what that really, enlightens, but it does make sense. Over time, the patterns of our dream narratives are unique to each of us, but they shouldn't be expected to faithfully replicate our daily lives. They found a woman named Dorothy who started recording dreams in her diary in 1912 and continued till her death in 1965. So that's 5 decades of dreams, which is so awesome. I hope to have that many dreams. I have a little over a decade of dreams as of right now, so we're getting there. But they were able to read the dreams and then pull out themes, and said that her astonishing 3/4 of all her dreams included food and eating, losing an object, being in a small or disorderly room, or having her room invaded by others. Let me make a side note of that. If that were my dream, I would think the room is a representation of the mind, Jung was a proponent that dreaming of homes and houses is a representation of the mind. So having like a room, I pull that to mean like to see that a room might be the same thing, like having your room invaded by others, like having it be like having your thoughts feel small or limited, having your thoughts feel disorderly, or having your thoughts feel invaded by others. That sounds common to each one of us. Um, Being in a dream with her mother, going to the toilet, and being late. Okay, so this is what's really interesting. He says, this pattern of dreaming showed remarkable consistency decade after decade. But reading these dream reports, you do not actually get clues about her life. So that's really interesting because that's just like another, I was talking about in the last video, how dreams are so incredible for social connection and a type of storytelling that connects us cross culturally throughout time. So, across cultures and across time throughout time. And this is another kind of proof to that dreams are about a deeper part of our humanity rather than our surface circumstances that we tend to identify and attach to and tend to actually put up barriers to our connection with other people who are different from us. So this is really interesting. So then he's talking about the researcher, a man who's doing the research on dreams and reading a lot of dreams. And he says Hall himself had trouble gauging individual personalities and characters from his patients' dreams. Studying the dreams of 17 men on the 1963 American Mount Everest expedition, okay, he decided two of them from studying, okay, so he's studying their dreams and trying to like see if he can pull actual character traits of these people from their dreams. So he decided, interesting experiment, by the way, I like it. He said he decided two of them would be the most popular, the most psychologically mature, and the best leaders. It turned out he was completely wrong. They were the least liked, the most immature, and were considered terrible at leading or building morale. Hall wrote that he was sobered by the enormity of his misjudgments. He'd made trying to determine waking behavior from the content of the climber's dreams. Hall's misjudgment showed the limits of dreams to reflect our waking reality. Dreams appear to be a distorted mirror at best. That I don't agree with. I don't think that's well worded. I don't think that's the right intention. I'll give you a better option. Who was it? It's either, it might have been Jung, but I think I read it in a book by Robert A. Johnson, who was saying, who's a dream worker. One of his books that's really good is called Inner Work, if you want to check it out. But he said that a lot of dreams are compensating, will show us a compensation for imbalances in our life. So a lot of times he noticed in his work and his body of research over many, many years of being a therapist and doing dream work with people is that the people who are like most passive in their waking life would have the most aggression in their dreams and vice versa. So he concluded that dreams will act as a sort of a balancing act for where we're imbalanced in our lives, and then can show us through that content where we could bring more balance into our lives. So I think that's a way more accurate description of this experiment than saying that dreams are limited, a limited reflection and a distorted mirror. No, I don't think so. I think dreams are a really clear mirror. I think this world is a far more distorted mirror. I think our ego selves give us far more distorted of a mirror than our dreaming selves, actually, in my opinion. But I had something else to add to this, which is really interesting. I had this thought maybe a year ago when I was just like standing around in a grocery store or something, and I was just I don't know, waiting in line or something, spacing out. And I was looking around, and I just had the thought that like you can look around at people and you can kind of tell, you can at least assume a fair amount about people by just the way they look and the way they present. Like you can assume their age, usually you can assume their sex, you can assume their even economic bracket. You can assume a lot of times you can assume they're like political leaning. You can assume maybe where they're from. Like if you're in a different country, like that's definitely an American, or that's definitely a foreigner in America. Like you can assume if they're single or married. You can assume a lot about people by you can assume like um, what kind of activities they like to do, if they're like outdoorsy or like they work at an office, like not that they're mutually exclusive, but you get my point. You can look at someone, and although a lot of your assumptions about their actual deeper life are probably wrong, you can kind of assume a lot about their surface life just by looking at them. But I was like, wow, it's impossible to just look at someone and be able, by the way they appear or how they're acting, be able at all to guess any of the content of their dreams. Like there's no way you can look at someone or even just have a conversation with someone and be like, I bet they dreamed about this last night. Like there's no way to know. It's a total mystery. So I like to do that experiment sometimes when I go out in the world and like look around and be like, every single person around me in this store right now had a dream last night. I wonder what it was. I wonder what these people experienced last night in their dreams. This example of like trying to judge people's inner or outer lives by their dreams and or vice versa by their appearance doesn't really work. So now he goes on to talk about how dreams develop in children. So when we're young, like how dreams develop side by side with our brain development. He says the ability to dream is a significant cognitive achievement that takes time to develop. We develop the capacity to dream in step with the development of visual spatial skills around the age of 4. And we know that the dreams of children and their waking imagination grow in tandem. The earliest dream reports by children don't involve motion or movement. They are more like still photos than a video. There's very little social interaction, and the dreamer is usually not participating in the dream. That's all really interesting. Among preschoolers, aggression, misfortune, and negative emotions are rare. The two main characteristics of dreams at this stage are animal characters and references to the state of the body, for example, hunger or fatigue. I thought that was really interesting, and it's a good tip for just dream interpretation in general. Animals can mean a lot of different things in dreams, but I find it common that animals in dreams can be symbolic of the state of our primal energy body, the state of the foundations of our vital energy, like how we're doing on a really like deep, archaic level of our bodies. And that a lot of times it's like a call for nourishment, say like dreaming of an animal that's like wounded or like dying or sick, or like, and we're trying to take care of it. That would, just in general, but animals can be a lot of different things. They can be guides, of course, like they can be friends and allies. They can give us medicine and healing. They can lend us their bodies and skills and abilities that we can use temporarily, like most people call that shape-shifting. But they also have to do with our primal energy body. So this is really interesting that like the youngest dream records from the youngest people that they can get dream records from are usually dreaming of animals. So they're usually dreaming of things related to their body, because that's where they're coming from. They're coming from like the foundation of like vital energy, the spark of life of creation, and forming into a body. So I thought that was interesting. From ages 5 to 8, children start reporting narrative dreams, though without chronology or sequence. Children initially think dreams are shared fantasies, interesting, but eventually they come to realize that their dreams are not shared experiences, but something private. This happens in parallel with the imagination network coming online around this age. Ugh, I just got a thought that kind of blew my mind. Does that mean we're just does that mean we're just imagining ourselves? Eventually, children come to realize their dreams are not shared experiences, but something private, and this happens in parallel with the imagination network coming online around this age. So it's almost this is my inference, and I could change my mind, but the thought that the spark of insight that just came to my mind is small children being still immersed in the oneness of being and the oneness of being with all things, our true state, our true form, and that we start then, as our imagination network comes online, we start imagining ourselves as separate. Well, that's crazy. I'm gonna have to think about that more. It's around the age of 7 or 8 that children become active participants in their dreams and begin to show dream reports that involve a sequence of events. This is the same time in a child's life when an awareness of an autobiographical self also emerges in both dreaming and waking. The autobiographical self is a sense of who we are, both in ourselves and in relation to others. Given the confluence of these developmental events, it seems likely that they're related, perhaps influencing or promoting one another. So again, I kind of wrote kind of how I said, I was oh my God, is this when we start imagining ourselves as separate? Rather than being in our true form like babies are, we all are. And then I also wrote here, this is the same as kind of moving from mythology to history. In the study of comparative religions, there is throughout all religions, from archaic religions or archaic spiritualities and practices to Christianity, Islam, Judaism, they all recognize a time before time. Basically, what in the book I was reading by Mircea Eliade, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, called Myths, Dreams, and Mysteries, he's talking about how all peoples throughout time have recognized that there was a shift between mythological time and history, or profane time. Mythological time, which they would call sacred time, and history, which they would call profane time. Mythological time is nonlinear. History or profane time is linear. Like I said in the last video, or 2 videos before this, that's why when they entered into profane time or linear time, they did all that they could to reenact nonlinear time because they knew that that was the true world. And basically, there's a tie from throughout all of these religions that basically is there is a real world and we're not experiencing it. And so this is really interesting right here, where he's babies are kind of still experiencing that non-linear formless world where we come from and where we return to, where we go when we dream. And then eventually, as they start getting the ability to imagine, they start also getting the ability to imagine themselves as separate from that and within a linear timeline. But all of that is just a perception. So he's saying the arrival of dreams, the way most of us think of them, occurs with the development of visual spatial skills, not language and memory skills. Interesting. Dreaming requires us to be able to visualize the world and manufacture situations, which are high-level cognitive processes. The key to the ability to dream is how well our minds can visually recreate reality. And I wrote, he's kind of saying what gives the children the ability to dream? Most children are already going to school and learning to read before they're dreaming. At least not in the way we think of dreams as a series of scenes. Yeah, I don't necessarily think dreams have to be a linear series of events, like a full narrative. I think a dream is a dream. If you dream of an animal but there's no narrative, that's still a dream. So I wouldn't agree that just because there's not a long narrative doesn't mean they're dreaming. And I would think that babies are still in the dream itself. Like there's not a distinction between the dream and the waking. And over time they begin to imagine themselves as apart from the dream, and that will like integrate linear time into the dream narrative, because that's what we're imagining here is ourselves in a linear timeline. So this is very interesting. Soon after the arrival of dreaming, a strikingly universal event in pediatric development occurs: nightmares. We'll look at nightmares more closely in the next chapter, but children experience many more nightmares than adults. Their dreamscapes are populated with monsters and supernatural beings, no matter how benign their rearing. And nightmares then fade for almost all of us when we move from childhood to adulthood. So that's really interesting that no matter what the content of your waking life is, we will still dream of monsters and supernatural beings, which I think goes to show the proof that there is a objective, collective mind of all things that we all have access to, no matter what. Because if you can't, how could you imagine something you haven't seen? Well, it's because you're connected with the imagination of all things, or the collective world of all things, or the eternal world where all shape, where all form exists simultaneously. Consider this. We now know dreaming corresponds with our development of a sense of self, the essential capacity that allows for an autobiographical memory and identity. So cool. No dreams serve to reinforce this sense of self more than nightmares. In a nightmare, the self is typically under attack or facing another kind of existential threat. A nightmare is essentially a battle of self versus other. This is a powerful way to instill the notion in a child that they are separate beings with their own will and their own place in the world. So that's really interesting, because when you look at comparative religions, that's the same thing that happened on the timeline of humanity. Is that I lost my thought. But like I was saying, it was this is the fall. This is everyone's individual fall from the eternal world, the garden, the mythological time into history. This is the fall from being one with the dream, one with your mom, one with everything, into being separate, being on the linear timeline. So it happens. This is showing how, and it is a traumatic event because it's experienced through nightmares. And then in comparative religions, let's say the story, let's take the Bible for example. The fall is also related to a sort of nightmare, or being booted out of the garden, booted out of eternity and into the temporary world. Wow, that's so interesting. That's gonna take some more thinking about. These thoughts weren't coming to me when I was taking notes. So, okay, this next section is called the evolutionary benefits of dreaming. Here we go. There are straightforward reasons we know that dreams aren't random. Thank you. I'm so glad he's going to just put that out here from a neurological perspective. That's a very useful, it seems very basic, but it's very useful because there's still a lot of people out there who think dreams are just like random spewings, and they're not. Let's prove it. One way that we know dreams can't be random is because many of us have recurring dreams. If dreams were random, the chance of having the same dream twice would be exceedingly low, and the chance of having the same dream more than twice would be impossible. There you go. Secondly, some of us can get up in the middle of the night, return to bed, and resume the same dream that we were having. Very true. I believe, this is him speaking, I believe we have evolved to dream. Here's why. Whenever possible, evolution holds onto traits that are advantageous. Evolution would never perpetuate traits that did not give us a clear advantage, especially if they demanded a lot of energy or exposed us to predation. Dreaming does both. Evolution would never perpetuate traits that did not give us a clear advantage, especially if they demand a lot of energy or expose us to danger. Dreaming does both. It demands a lot of energy and leaves us vulnerable while we're asleep. Bam. That's so cool. I love that. Thank you for saying that. Because that's just like, that's like super legit and really exciting and really interesting to think about. And I feel like that's something like nobody thinks about or really says in that is like such a not a, like a common perspective to have, but it's also so obvious and so clear. And so I'm thanking this author for saying that so eloquently. Let's go on. What possible biological or behavioral advantage do we get by spending years or maybe decades of our lives dreaming? These questions have provoked a lot of theories. So some theories include dreams exist as a kind of threat rehearsal, a way to practice reorganizing and responding to threats in a safe way. In this theory, dreams are like virtual simulations where we can test different responses and imagine the consequences. It could be that we are better at managing real-world threats based on our dream life experiences. In perhaps a modern version of threat rehearsal, Isabel Arnolf, a professor of neurology at the Sorbonne, God, my pronunciation is shit, I'm sorry, Sorbonne University in Paris, definitely pronounced that wrong, alright, asked students about their dreams before their medical school entrance exam. Dreams about the exam were common, and more than 3/4 were nightmares. Interestingly, students who dreamed about the exam frequently did about 20% better than those who never dreamed about it. Very interesting. The dream reports, she concluded, served as a kind of checklist for all possible situations, ranging from those that were likely, such as forgetting one's documents, to those that were improbable or impossible, such as taking a plane to the exam. However, if threat simulation was the only reason we dream, then all of our dreams would involve imagined threats, and we know that's not true. Another theory suggests that dreams have therapeutic value, serving as a kind of nocturnal therapist, helping us digest and metabolize anxiety-provoking emotions. These dreams can actually help us avoid embarrassment in our waking lives. And recent research shows fear responses to emotional waking experiences are blunted the morning following these kind of dreams. Evidence of the therapeutic value of dreams can also be found in the dreams of divorcing couples, which found that dreams could by themselves be accurate predictors. Dreams could by themselves alone could be accurate predictors of who would and who would not recover from post-divorce depression. Those who recovered tended to have dreams that were more dramatic, with complex plots that mixed old and new memories. Divorce test subjects were working out their negative feelings about their former spouse in their dreams and had the effect of diffusing the emotion and preparing the dreamer to wake up ready to see things more positively and make a fresh start. The degree to which divorcing couples dreamed about each other was correlated with how well they moved on. Wow, that's a huge thing to be able to prove in a study. That's amazing. Testing different interpersonal scenarios when it comes to visualizing all sorts of social situations, nothing matches dreaming. Dreams are Dreams are capable of delivering an incredible range of plots, both realistic and implausible, and in each of them we imagine how they play out. How well we interact with others is vital from an evolutionary perspective. Another way how dreams help us socially and how dreams help us live well. Cut that. This is in fact another point about how dreams help us as social beings, which is key to our survival. So another theory is that dreams keep the brain tuned and ready even during sleep, which is kind of interesting, something I never thought about. And this would benefit us because the accompanying bursts of mental activity keep neural networks finely tuned as a sort of pilot flame for the brain. That way, if we are awakened, the brain can quickly become alert and engaged. That's an interesting one. Eric Hoel, Hoel, proposed something he calls the overfitted brain hypothesis and suggests that dreams exist to help generalize what we've learned in our waking lives. Okay, so at first I was like, well, that's kind of lame. But then he goes into something more interesting where he's talking about machine learning. And I won't read the entire thing, but I'm going to jump to this point. So, like the data sets a machine receives for machine learning, our day-to-day lived experience can often give us limited information about our world, creating patterns of thought that are constrained or boxed in. Habituating to a routine is efficient, but also limits how adaptable we are to unexpected circumstances. Dreams, with their fantastic and surreal quality, are much like the noise injected into a machine's data, which they do for machine learning. They add random noise to data in machine learning to make important signals more detectable rather than less so. And this could lead to more flexible and creative thinking. So if you want to actually get into that, I would suggest this is on page 26 to 27. And at first I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? But then I was like, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. And again, he's going to go on to say that he more so believes that all of these things are true at once, which that's obviously or definitely the stance I take. I don't think any of these are exclusive to what dreams are. I think that, but they all are ways that dreams and dreaming benefit us. And these theories, yeah, it's just interesting to read different theories. Like this one, I would never think of on my own because I know nothing about machine learning. But there's an interesting metaphor in this where he's like, our waking lives can be quite limiting, especially as we get more and more into routine. And dreams show us ourselves unlimited, show us the parts of ourselves that are not confined to our daily routines, our roles, and the expectations of others that we play out continuously, and can show us where we are connected with other energies in the collective mind of all things, in the eternal world. They can show us what archetypes we're playing out at any point in our lives. No matter how mundane our life might seem at any given moment, we are still playing out this magical and archetypal story underneath that, and dreams will show us that. They'll show us what energy. Are we connected with a warrior archetype right now, or a magician archetype, or a priestess archetype, or a maiden archetype? All of these different energies that can help bring a lot of magic into our lives and help expand our lived experience, no matter how mundane or routine it is. if we can add little bits of our dream energy into our lives on a daily in a daily practice, which is what I practice and what I teach, then we will be able to infuse our lives with far more opportunities, much more potential, much more inspiration, more creativity, more healing. It will expand our lived experience, and we don't have to like get up and uproot everything and change our whole lives to do it. It's small moments. It's in small moments that can have a deep effect. Even the smallest synchronicity can like change your whole day, your whole week, your perspective and outlook on life. To have these little magic moments happen when the linear timeline collapses and all of a sudden like we're out of time again, and we're bringing, like it's like something happens that's like total magic, that's unexplainable. And bringing more and more of this, inducing more and more of this into our lives will lead for sure to a place of far more, not only contentment and inspiration, but mindfulness also, where we'll be more willing and excited to pay attention to our lives, to pay attention to the mundane moments, sitting in traffic, standing in line, like whatever that is, will be more present in our lives when we're bringing this energy, bringing dream energy into it. When we're dreaming, adrenaline is turned down and our discernment between signal and noise loosens. So he's saying in machine learning that they add noise so that the computer or machine is able to, it actually helps them distinguish between something important and something not important. And so he's like, oh, what if dreams are just adding noise so we can better discern in our waking lives between something that's important and not important? Maybe. I think the metaphor is more interesting. But anyways, let's go on. When we're dreaming, adrenaline is turned down and our discernment between signal and noise loosens. This gives us the power when we're dreaming to think creatively and divergently. This kind of thinking that looks at a problem in a completely novel way or from an original perspective and that can be very difficult when we're knuckling down to solve a problem during our waking hours. The lack of adrenaline in our brains during dreams allows for the suspension of disbelief required for this sort of adventurous dreaming. Very interesting. The executive network and adrenaline in the brain both serve familiar functions, vigilance and outward focus. At the same time, the adrenaline in our bodies is unchanged and will cause us to experience dreams as though they are real. So that's interesting. It's like kind of a mind-body way that sets us up for being able to immerse completely in the dream. So the adrenaline in our body is still working, so we're able to like have that bodily reaction to our dreams as if they were very real and have it still be integrated in our body, but the adrenaline in our minds is turned way down so that we're not like focusing on like that's not right, that's out of time, that's not real, and allows us to have the experience. This is also interesting because this goes into the question of, since our body believes like our body can't tell the difference between a waking image and a dream image and responds to both of them equally, I feel like that opens the pathway for questions like, would we be able to heal our bodies in our dreams alone? Could we like accelerate healing in our bodies by dreaming, by doing it in the body? Like if we can if we can have a dream that's so believable to the body, because it already is, and do a waking intention like healing my broken wrist in the dream, how much of that energy can transfer over into my waking self? It's the same body, so, well, it's a dream body for the physical body, so it's a holographic body. It's not necessarily the same body, but at the end of the day, our physical form is just a dense holographic form, so they do have a connection. And, when you dream and you trip off a stair, your body jolts as if you're falling. So there is a deep connection between our dream body and our waking body. And I do think that it is absolutely possible that we can influence the state of our body in our dreams with our waking intentions if we can become lucid in our dreams and apply those intentions in our dreams in a focused way. And there's a lot there. There's a lot there. All right. This type of imaginative and unbound thinking during dreaming could pay dividends by finding adaptive solutions to existential threats. When I talk about evolution being survival of the fittest, I believe fittest means most adaptive. Dreams' bizarre narratives help us do just that, navigate the world with all its complexity, and give us the best chance of dealing with the widest set of challenges we may face. So cool. At the end of the day, no theory has emerged as to the single reason humans have retained the need to dream. In fact, the evidence suggests all of these theories are valid to some degree, intertwined and interdependent. I totally agree. We shouldn't expect there to be a single reason for dreaming, just like there isn't a single reason for waking thought. Very true. These theories help explain all the ways, or some of the ways, in which dreams help us as a species to adapt and survive. But I believe dreams also help us become who we are. One particular dream appears to play an outsized role in the cultivation of our sense of narrative identity and sense of self, allowing the unique person to emerge. It's one we've all had, the nightmare. That's the next chapter, chapter 2, coming up.